Find a comfortable position. Let your body settle into its weight. Allow your breathing to even out. There is no destination to reach tonight, no arrival to consider. The journey has already slowed. The path will carry itself. When you are ready, we begin. Tonight's story is called Where the Light Lowers into Silence. The light is still present when you first notice it, not bright, not urgent, just there, stretched thin across the room as though it has decided to remain a little longer before releasing the day. It rests along the floorboards in a narrow band, touching the grain in a way that reveals each faint line and ripple in the wood. The boards have warmed through the afternoon, and now that warmth lingers not as heat, but as memory. If you placed your palm there, it would feel neither cool nor warm, simply settled. The air has grown still. Earlier, there may have been movement, a draft slipping beneath a door, a current shifting along the ceiling, but now the air holds itself in place. Dust floats without direction. It does not travel, it simply hovers. You sit within that quiet. The light touches the wall opposite you at a low angle, creating a long, soft edge where brightness meets shadow. It is not a sharp line. It blurs gently, as though unwilling to divide the room too precisely. There is a faint mark on the wall, a thin, almost invisible line where the sun has brushed at this same height for years. It has lightened the paint there just slightly. A quiet habit of evening. The kind of detail no one points out, but which remains all the same. Outside, the sky has begun to thin. The color has shifted from gold to something softer, a pale wash that no longer glows but still reflects. The brightness no longer spreads outward. It lowers. You notice it not through intensity, but through subtraction. Corners of the room no longer carry as much definition. The edge of the chair near the far wall has softened into shape rather than outline. Nothing dramatic is happening. That is the beauty of it. The day does not collapse. It does not end with a sound. It releases gradually, like a held breath easing outward. There is something steady in that release. You remain seated or resting, aware of the subtle change in atmosphere without needing to respond to it. Your breathing continues at its own pace. Inhale, release. A small pause before the next. The light lowers another fraction. It no longer reaches as far across the floor. The long band has shortened. The grain of the wood is less defined now, not because it has changed, but because the illumination has thinned. A faint sound carries from somewhere beyond the room, perhaps a distant door closing, perhaps something settling outside. It arrives once. It does not repeat. The silence returns intact. You notice how naturally your shoulders have eased. No instruction guided them downward. They have simply followed the atmosphere. The body responds to the room without being told. There is a kind of kindness in evenings like this. They do not demand acknowledgement. They do not announce themselves loudly. They adjust the light until you realize you are already within something softer. The ceiling above you fades into a deeper shade. The corners hold more shadow than before, yet nothing feels darker in a way that presses or closes in. It feels rounded, dimmed gently. Your eyes no longer search the space, they rest. The light lowers again, not visibly, not in a measurable way, but enough that the room feels quieter for it, as though brightness itself has exhaled. The window reflects more interior than exterior now. The sky beyond has lost its color. It carries only a muted glow, barely enough to outline the frame. Inside, the air has cooled a degree, just enough to be felt along the skin of your forearms. Not cold, simply shifted. You do not need to follow that shift. You do not need to track how much light remains. It continues lowering on its own, and you remain exactly where you are within it. The room has not changed its shape. The walls stand, the floor holds, the chair supports, but the atmosphere has softened into something almost weightless. The light no longer reaches the base of the wall. It lingers higher now, closer to the middle, as if reluctant to leave entirely. You notice the faint crease in the cushion beneath your hand, a line formed by repeated use pressed into fabric over years. It holds the shape of countless evenings. It does not ask to be smoothed, it simply remains. The day lowers further. Edges lose their clarity. The air deepens, and you sit inside the slow descent of light, aware only of its gentleness, not as a concept, not as a statement, but as a quiet fact unfolding around you. Nothing more is required. The light continues to lower, and you are already within it. The lowering continues in increments too small to measure. It is not something you watch so much as something you feel, a soft recalibration of space. The room begins to hold more shadow than brightness, yet neither dominates. They share the walls without tension. You shift slightly in your seat, not to adjust discomfort, simply because the body responds to the atmosphere as it deepens. The fabric beneath you gives faintly, easing around your weight. There is a soft crease near the edge of the cushion where someone once sat often enough to leave a subtle impression. It is never fully lifted. You rest your hand there for a moment. The light now gathers closer to the window, drawing inward as if retreating into its own origin. The far corner of the room is no longer defined by color, but by presence. It is there. You know it is there. That is enough. Outside, the air carries a faint change in tone. A single bird calls once, then quiets. The sound is contained, not sharp. It folds into the distance rather than echoing. You breathe in. The air has cooled another degree. It feels rounder somehow, less animated, more settled. There is something reassuring about the way evening does this. It does not demand attention. It reduces what is unnecessary until only the essential shapes remain. The edge of the table near you catches the last thin line of light. It glows softly along its surface, revealing a faint scratch in the varnish, barely visible unless you lean closer. It looks like the mark of a ring or the slow drag of a cup over years of use. No one polished it away. It stayed. The light touches it once more, then eases past. You do not follow it. The ceiling above you darkens gradually, but not in a way that feels heavy. It feels like the lowering of a curtain made of air, translucent, unhurried. There is a small mechanical sound somewhere in the house, perhaps the gentle shift of pipes adjusting to temperature or a distant appliance completing its cycle. It hums briefly, then returns to stillness. The room absorbs it without disturbance. You let your gaze soften toward the window. The sky beyond has thinned into a pale gradient, no longer blue, not yet night. A quiet in between, the kind of color that does not insist on naming. The boundary between inside and outside feels less pronounced now. The reflection in the glass shows more of the room than of the sky. Your own outline appears faintly, not sharply, just a presence within the frame. There is something tender about this stage of evening. It does not rush toward darkness. It lets the light lower with dignity. You notice your breathing has deepened without effort. Inhale, a longer release. The pause between grows softer, less deliberate. The chair beneath you steadies. The room steadies. Even the air seems to settle into a quieter density. You do not need to think about the passage of time. There is no clock drawing attention, no device marking the hour. The only measure is the light itself, lowering by degrees. A faint scent reaches you, perhaps the trace of something cooling in another part of the house. Warm bread long since removed from the oven. Wood that held sunlight through the afternoon and now gives it back slowly. It is not strong, just present. The walls no longer carry definition in their texture. Their color has softened into tone rather than surface. You no longer see brush strokes or small imperfections. You sense only shape. Your shoulders release another fraction. The light narrows again. It no longer touches the floor. It rests only at the window now, a quiet frame of pale illumination against gathering dimness. You remain seated, aware of the shift without tracking it. There is no urgency in this transition. Evening does not arrive, it lowers, and you are here as it does. The light continues its gradual descent, though it no longer feels like descent at all. It feels like absorption, as though the room is learning how to hold less brightness and more presence. You shift your attention toward the window again, not sharply, just enough to register the way the sky has thinned. The color now resembles watered silk, pale, layered, without a single edge to follow. It does not pull at the eye. It allows the gaze to rest. The glass reflects more of the interior than before. The outline of the chair, the soft angle of the table, a suggestion of your shoulder. The world beyond remains, but it recedes gently behind the room's quiet geometry. You notice how the edges of objects have softened. The corner of the bookshelf no longer draws a clear line against the wall. The frame of the window seems to widen slightly as shadow fills its margins. Even the floorboards, once defined by faint seams, now read as one continuous surface. There is something almost intimate about this shift. The room is not becoming darker in a dramatic way. It is becoming closer, more unified. Your hand rests loosely on your lap. The skin at your wrist feels cooler than before, not cold, just touched by the subtle lowering of temperature that accompanies the fading light. You rub your thumb lightly against your palm, a small, unplanned motion, and the friction feels grounding. Somewhere beyond the window, a distant door closes. The sound travels through air already thickening with evening. It does not echo. It lands gently and is gone. You inhale again. The breath feels fuller now, not because you are trying to deepen it, but because the air invites it. There is less distraction in the room, fewer visual signals asking for interpretation. Your body responds by settling further into itself. The wall opposite you holds a slightly darker tone now. In one small corner near the ceiling, a place where light always lingered longer during the day, there remains a faint glow. It resists departure for a moment, then yields. You do not mourn its fading. There is comfort in watching something complete itself without interruption. A faint ticking reaches you, not a clock, perhaps, but the quiet adjustment of cooling wood, the house responding to the change in temperature. It is a small sound, domestic, familiar. It carries no message. You let your gaze fall away from the window. The room now holds a balanced dimness, not dark enough to conceal, not bright enough to define. Just enough light remains to suggest form. Your spine eases further into the chair. The weight of your body feels evenly distributed, supported rather than held up. The floor beneath your feet seems steadier now, as if gravity itself has softened into something more generous. The transition continues. You do not need to track it. You are already within it. The dimness gathers gradually, not in a wave, but in a settling, like fine dust lowering through still air. You remain where you are, aware of the way the room adjusts without needing your participation. Your eyes move gently across the space again. Shapes have simplified. The grain in the wood no longer asks to be examined. The edges of books along the shelf blend into one softened band. The fabric of the curtain appears heavier now, less translucent, as if evening has stitched a deeper thread through it. You lean back a fraction more. The chair answers the shift without complaint. There is a faint indentation in the cushion where you have been sitting, not dramatic, just enough to suggest that time has passed here. The fabric carries a subtle warmth from your body. That warmth does not rush away. It lingers. The air feels slightly thicker now. Not stale, not cool, just full, as though the room has drawn in the day's final light and is holding it quietly in suspension. Outside, the sky continues its slow transformation. The last hints of color are no longer visible directly, but their memory remains in the tone of the glass. A muted sheen replaces the earlier glow. The window has shifted from being a view into distance to being a darkened surface that reflects the interior more fully. You notice your reflection more clearly now, not in detail, but in outline. The shape of your head, the slope of your shoulder, a suggestion of stillness. There is something steadying about seeing yourself held within the room like that. The silence deepens. It is not absolute silence. There are small, almost imperceptible sounds woven through it. A faint mechanical hum from somewhere in the building. The subtle creak of wood adjusting as the temperature lowers. A distant murmur beyond the walls that dissolves before it forms. Each sound arrives and fades without leaving residue. You let your gaze rest on the floorboards. The seams between them are barely visible now. They no longer divide the surface into separate lines. They simply hint at structure beneath the surface. The wood carries a slight sheen where countless steps have worn it smooth over years. You imagine hands having rested against these boards, chairs moved across them, light falling across them in different seasons. There's something reassuring about surfaces that have endured. You inhale slowly. The breath feels even, unforced. Your shoulders ease downward another fraction. You do not instruct them to do so. They simply respond to the lowering of light, the softening of contrast, the reduction of visual demand. The room holds you in that easing. You notice a faint mark on the edge of the table, a small crescent indentation, as though a cup once rested there too long and left a trace. It is not distracting. It is quiet evidence of previous evenings, of presence that did not rush. You slide your fingers lightly along the tabletop. The surface is cool now, not cold, just no longer warmed by the day. The grain is smooth under your skin. Your touch leaves no visible change. The air seems to settle lower in the room, though of course it does not truly descend. It simply feels denser near the floor, calmer. The ceiling above appears farther away in the dimness. The walls no longer define boundaries sharply. They form a soft enclosure. You blink slowly. The pause between closing your eyes and opening them again feels longer now. Somewhere beyond the window, a single bird call sounds once, not urgent, not alarmed, just a small punctuation in the thickening evening. It fades quickly. You do not follow it. The room grows darker by degrees, so small they cannot be measured. The shift happens within your perception rather than outside it. You become more aware of interior sensation, the weight of your arms, the gentle contact of fabric against your skin, the subtle rise and fall of your chest. The outer world becomes quieter, and in that quiet, your own body becomes more present. You notice how your breathing has lengthened. The inhale fills the chest slowly. The exhale empties without force. There is no attempt to deepen it. It has found its own depth. A faint scent reaches you, not strong enough to name, just a trace of something cooling. Perhaps wood, perhaps fabric, perhaps simply the absence of warmth. You remain seated. The room does not ask you to move. The last trace of light in the high corner has dissolved. The walls now hold an even tone, no area brighter than another. The room feels unified, less a collection of objects, more a single held space. There's something almost tender about how evening does this. It does not take light away abruptly. It redistributes it until nothing stands apart. Your reflection in the window darkens further. You can no longer distinguish features. Only a softened outline remains, merging gently with the interior behind you. The line between outside and inside grows less meaningful. You let your head rest back fully against the chair. The support is immediate and steady. You feel the subtle pull of gravity, not heavy, not pressing, just enough to anchor you. Your feet rest flat on the floor. The boards beneath them feel solid, grounded. Another small sound carries through the space, the faintest click from somewhere beyond the door, perhaps a latch settling into place as the building cools. It is brief. It leaves no tension. You exhale. The breath leaves you more slowly than before. The room continues its quiet transition. The shapes of objects are now suggested rather than seen. The table becomes a darker shape within a darker field. The chair beneath you feels less like a separate structure and more like an extension of the floor. You close your eyes for a moment. The darkness behind them matches the darkness in the room. There is no contrast. You open them again slowly, and nothing has changed abruptly. The space remains calm, held. Your hands rest loosely, fingers slightly curved. The skin at your knuckles feels cooler than earlier, the warmth of the day fully gone now. The air brushes lightly against them, almost imperceptible. You do not need to adjust. The house around you has settled into evening. The faint mechanical hum has steadied into something barely audible. The wood has finished its small adjustments. The outside sounds have thinned. What remains is presence. You feel how the day has lowered itself completely now. There is no more descent to track. The light has not vanished. It has simply become part of the dark. You remain within it, still seated, still breathing, still held. The room no longer feels like something you are observing. It feels like something you are resting inside. There is nothing further to prepare. Evening has arrived fully, and you have arrived with it. The quiet holds its shape. You remain seated for a little while longer, letting the dimness settle fully into the corners of the room. There is no visible edge now between where light once lingered and where shadow gathers. Everything shares the same tone, low, even, uninsistent. Your eyes adjust. The outline of the window softens into a darker square within the wall. The table is no longer an object with legs and grain and edges. It is a grounded presence. The chair beneath you feels less like furniture and more like structure, something that belongs to the architecture of the room itself. You breathe in. The breath moves slowly, filling you without reaching for depth. The air inside the house feels steady, neither warm nor cold. It rests lightly against your skin. There is a faint trace of old wood, not sharp, not resinous, just the lingering scent of material that has absorbed years of weather and release. You let your gaze drift toward the doorway. It is open. Beyond it, another stretch of darkness waits, not empty, not unknown, just unlit. The threshold no longer marks a transition, so much as a continuation. One space leads quietly into another. You rise, not abruptly, but as though responding to a gentle internal tide. Your weight shifts forward. Your feet meet the floor with full contact. The boards accept the pressure without complaint. You stand. For a moment, you simply remain there, aware of the upright line of your body in the dimness. There is a subtle anchoring that comes with standing in low light. Your balance feels different, not strained, just more aware. Your spine aligns without effort. You step toward the doorway. The movement is unhurried. The room does not recede behind you, it accompanies you. The faint indentation in the chair cushion remains, the crescent mark on the table holds its place, the softened grain of the floor continues under your steps. As you cross the threshold, the air shifts slightly. The second room carries a cooler tone. The scent here is more muted, less touched by the day's warmth. Your eyes take a moment to adjust again. Shapes resolve slowly, the suggestion of a shelf along one wall, the outline of a narrow bench, the faint glint of metal where a hinge rests. The window here is smaller. It admits less reflection, more depth. You move farther inside. There is a rug beneath your feet now, its weave slightly uneven. Your step compresses it gently. The fibers respond with quiet resilience. You feel the difference immediately, less firmness, more give. It is grounding. You pause beside the window. Outside, the sky has deepened to a tone that no longer carries color. The world beyond the glass is not visible in detail. It exists as mass and suggestion. A tree line, perhaps, a fence, a shape of ground rising and falling. You do not strain to see it. There's something honest about darkness that does not reveal everything. You rest your palm lightly against the glass. It is cooler than the air inside. The temperature difference is subtle but distinct. The glass does not feel cold enough to withdraw from, just cool enough to remind you that outside continues independently of the room. Your reflection merges faintly with the dark beyond. You are not separate from what you look at. You are layered within it. You lower your hand. A faint sound reaches you, a soft expansion somewhere in the house, wood settling into its new temperature. It is brief. It completes itself fully before silence resumes. You turn slowly toward the far wall. There is a small framed photograph there, its image no longer visible in the dimness. Only the rectangular outline remains. The glass over it reflects nothing now. It absorbs. You do not move closer. Some things are allowed to remain indistinct. The floorboards here run in a different direction than in the previous room. Your steps adjust to the new orientation. There is a faint scuff near the corner, a mark worn smooth by repeated passing. You notice it without stopping. You drift toward the center of the room. The ceiling feels lower here, though it likely is not. The darkness creates a sense of closeness, not confinement, containment. You inhale again. The breath feels deeper now, the rhythm slower. The exhale lengthens, thinning gently into the quiet. You lower yourself onto the bench along the wall. The wood beneath you is firm, less yielding than the chair you left behind. It supports without cushioning. Your body adjusts easily to the difference. Your hands rest loosely on your thighs. The silence here is fuller. It carries a density that feels almost tangible, not heavy, but complete. There are no interruptions. No distant sounds filtering in. You sit, time loosens. The house continues its subtle exchanges, tiny shifts too small to measure. The air remains steady. The floor remains grounded. The darkness holds evenly across surfaces. Your eyes soften. You notice how the edges of objects no longer draw your attention. The bench, the shelf, the framed outline, they do not compete for focus. They share the same level of presence. You feel the weight of your body on the bench more distinctly now. The contact points at your hips, the steady support along your back, the way your feet rest flat, evenly distributed. Your breathing aligns with the stillness around you. In, out. The sound of your breath is barely audible, but you feel it internally, a subtle expansion through the ribs, a gentle settling as the air leaves. The house does not require you to move again. It holds you. There is something comforting about being in a place that remembers the day without needing to speak of it. The warmth absorbed into its walls, the light that moved across its surfaces, the quiet tasks completed within it. All of it remains. You lower your gaze to the floor. The faint scuff you noticed earlier appears softer now, almost erased by the dark. You imagine how many times someone stepped there without thought, the repetition that formed it, the slow smoothing over years. There is steadiness in repetition. Your eyelids feel heavier, not strained, just willing. The darkness inside the room matches the darkness behind your eyes more closely now. The contrast between open and closed diminishes. You remain seated. The house continues around you unchanged. Your breath continues. The day has lowered completely. You are within what remains. You remain seated on the bench as the quiet deepens into something almost tactile. It is not silence in the strict sense. There are still small movements within the house, air shifting through narrow spaces, wood adjusting by fractions. But the sounds are so subdued they feel more like texture than interruption. They settle into the background quickly, leaving no trace. Your body begins to register the bench differently now. At first, it was surface and firmness. Now it feels like foundation. The line of wood beneath you seems less like an object and more like an extension of the floor itself. Steady, supportive, patient. You let your spine lengthen slightly. Not an effort, just in allowance. Your shoulders lower another fraction. There's a particular comfort in sitting in a room that has already finished its day. The walls no longer expect light. The air no longer holds warmth from the sun. Everything has adjusted to a quieter register, and your body seems to follow. You tilt your head slightly toward the window. The darkness outside has deepened into something uniform. No edges, no visible horizon. The world beyond the glass feels wide, but not demanding. It does not ask to be observed. You rest your gaze there without searching. There's something honest about a landscape that doesn't need to be seen clearly to be felt. Your breathing steadies further. In, out, each inhale arrives without urgency. Each exhale seems to soften the space around you, as though the room itself breathes in slow sympathy. You shift one foot slightly on the rug. The fibers respond with a faint whisper, a sound so subtle it barely registers. The uneven weave compresses beneath your heel, then returns gently to its shape. You notice how the contact grounds you. The weight of your body is distributed evenly now, feet resting flat, hips anchored, hands loose and unburdened. The darkness inside the room continues to gather, not thickening, not pressing, just settling into its full presence. Your eyelids lower briefly, then lift again. The room remains unchanged. The framed photograph on the wall is only a shape now. The shelf is a darker line within the wall. The small hinge near the door catches no light at all. You realize you are no longer identifying objects. You are inhabiting space. The air feels slightly cooler against your cheeks, a quiet reminder that the day has fully withdrawn. The scent of old wood remains faint, consistent, mingled with something softer, perhaps fabric or paper long undisturbed. You let your gaze drift downward. The floorboards form a pattern you no longer need to see clearly. Their direction, their spacing, all of it feels known without inspection. A faint tick reaches you from somewhere deeper in the house, perhaps a beam easing under its own weight. It arrives and completes itself in a single moment, then stillness again. You lean back slightly against the wall. The contact feels reassuring, solid, unmoving. The plaster holds steady behind you, its surface cool through the fabric of your clothing. You realize how little effort is required to remain here. No adjustment needed. No next movement waiting. There's a small comfort in noticing that the house does not change when you stop paying attention to it. It continues in its own quiet rhythm. Your breath lengthens again. The pause between inhale and exhale widens slightly, not forced, just allowed. You close your eyes fully now. The darkness behind your lids mirrors the darkness of the room, so closely that the difference fades. There is no longer an interior and exterior distinction. You sit within a field of even tone. Your awareness shifts lower, toward the sensation of weight in your hips, the gentle pressure along your back, the contact of your palms resting against fabric. There's something steady about being held by a structure that has already absorbed so many days. The house has seen mornings and storms and still afternoons. It has known voices and footsteps and long stretches of quiet. Now it knows this. You seated, breathing. The air moves slowly across your lips as you exhale. The temperature difference between inhale and exhale is slight but noticeable, a small exchange with the room. You let the breath carry you inward, not into thought, into presence. A subtle shift in your posture occurs, your chin lowers just slightly. The muscles in your jaw release. The tongue rests more heavily at the base of your mouth. The darkness feels closer now, but not enclosing. More like a gentle covering, something that allows edges to soften. There's a faint memory of light in the room where it once rested, how it moved across the floor earlier in the day. But it no longer matters. Light has completed its work here. Your attention drifts toward the doorway again. Even with your eyes closed, you sense its position. the openness leading into the other room, the continuity of space. The house is not divided, it is layered. You imagine the chair in the first room, still holding the faint imprint of your weight, the table with its crescent indentation, the floorboards warmed earlier by the sun. All of it remains undisturbed. There's a quiet reassurance in knowing that rooms do not demand presence to continue being themselves. You shift your hand slightly against your thigh. The fabric gathers softly beneath your fingers, then smooths. The movement is small. Contained, your breathing deepens another fraction. The exhale lengthens. Your shoulders lower again, so subtly you almost don't notice the change. The silence expands, not because sound disappears, but because your awareness no longer reaches outward. You rest. The bench holds, the wall supports. The floor remains grounded beneath your feet. There is no need to mark time. The house does not measure it. Your thoughts slow, then thin. Impressions pass through without catching: the idea of the photograph on the wall, the rug beneath your heel, the small hinge near the door. They appear briefly, then dissolve into the same even darkness. There's something deeply steady about a space that has finished speaking for the day. You sit within that steadiness. Your breath continues. In, out. The house continues as well. The walls remain upright. The beams hold their quiet tension. The air rests between surfaces without disturbance. You are no longer watching the darkness. You are within it. The distinction between the bench and your body has softened. Between the wall and your back, between the floor and your feet, you are supported. Not by effort, by structure. And the stillness deepens again, not further, but more fully, as the night settles completely around the house, and around you, equal and undivided. The quiet continues without announcing itself. It has settled so fully now that even the smallest shifts seem to occur within it rather than against it. The house no longer feels like a structure you entered. It feels like an atmosphere you are breathing. You remain seated. Your hands rest loosely, fingers curved in their natural shape. There is no effort in holding them that way. The muscles have softened into a position they recognize as sustainable. The bench beneath you holds its line. The wood does not creak or complain. It simply supports. There's something reassuring about old materials that have already adjusted to their own weight. They do not need to prove their strength. They simply remain. Your breathing lengthens again, though you do not guide it. The inhale arrives gently, filling the lower ribs first. The exhale spills outward, unhurried, warm against the cooler air of the room. The temperature has steadied. It rests at a point that neither chills nor warms. It simply exists, balanced, consistent. You notice how the darkness has changed. Earlier, it felt like the absence of light. Now it feels like presence, a soft field that holds edges without defining them. The corners of the room no longer seem distant. They feel near, contained within the same quiet envelope. A faint sound travels through the house, perhaps a small contraction of wood somewhere deeper in the beams. It is not sharp. It arrives softly, like a distant tap, then completes itself. You do not track it, you allow it to pass. Your head tilts slightly to one side, not from fatigue, but from ease. The neck muscles loosen further. The jaw remains unclenched. The tongue rests naturally. There's a subtle awareness of your heartbeat now, not loud, just present, a steady rhythm beneath the quiet, matching the steadiness of the house itself. The air around you feels still, yet alive with subtle exchange. Each exhale moves it slightly. Each inhale draws it inward. The balance remains constant. You sense the doorway again, the open passage into the other room, but it no longer feels like a threshold. It feels like continuation. The house is one space now, even if divided by walls. You sit within the center of it, though there is no center to locate. There's something tender about how rooms hold absence. The absence of light, the absence of voices, the absence of movement. They do not rush to fill it, they simply keep it. Your spine settles more deeply against the wall. The contact feels grounding. Cool plaster meeting fabric. Steady, unyielding in a way that feels supportive rather than rigid. Your feet remain flat against the floorboards. You become aware of the subtle grain beneath the soles of your shoes, faint ridges worn smooth by years of passing. They press gently upward, grounding you in place. The house does not ask for attention. It does not shift to accommodate your presence. It simply continues. Your awareness begins to drift inward again. The photograph on the wall no longer appears as image, only as a darker shape within darkness. The shelf dissolves into line. The doorframe fades into shadow. Details recede. Sensation remains, your breath. The weight of your body, the steady surface beneath you. There is no story unfolding here, only continuation. A small sigh escapes you, barely audible, more breath than sound. It dissipates quickly into the room, leaving no echo. You notice how even that small release feels complete. There is nothing left to adjust. The house has found its level for the night, and so have you. A subtle shift of air brushes your cheek, perhaps from a gap beneath a door or the slow settling of temperature between rooms. It is gentle, fleeting. You do not open your eyes. There's a particular comfort in remaining still while the world continues without spectacle. The beams above you hold their quiet tension. The floor supports its own span. The roof rests securely above. You are not holding any of it up. You are simply within it. Your breathing deepens once more, though now the distinction between inhale and exhale feels less pronounced. The cycle smooths into something continuous, like the tide turning without visible line. The darkness behind your eyelids feels the same as the darkness of the room. There is no boundary to track, no edge to identify. Your shoulders sink another fraction, almost imperceptibly. The bench holds, the wall steadies. The floor remains grounded. There's a faint memory of daylight in the grain of the wood, where light once traced lines across its surface. But that memory carries no urgency. It is simply part of the house's larger pattern. You let the thought pass. The room seems to widen now, not physically, but perceptually. The edges feel farther away. The center feels softer. You are no longer sitting in a weathered house. You are resting within its quiet. Your awareness floats lightly across surfaces, the bench, the wall, the air, without attaching to any one thing. Each sensation appears and settles. Even the faint scent of wood and old fabric has softened into neutrality. There is nothing sharp, nothing pulling, nothing waiting. The house continues. The beams remain aligned. The walls hold their shape. The floor keeps its quiet pattern of boards and seams. You are held within that structure. Your breathing steadies again. A long inhale, a longer exhale. Time loosens its edges. You could sit here for minutes or hours and the house would not change its posture. It has already settled into night, and so have you. The darkness no longer feels like absence. It feels complete. You remain seated, but the sense of being a separate body within a room has thinned. There is bench, there is wall, there is breath, and all of it rests within the same steady field. The house does not require watching. It does not require remembering. It does not require interpretation. It continues in its quiet, even rhythm, and you remain within it, supported, unhurried, as the stillness deepens fully and without effort around you. The stillness shifts, though not in a way that announces itself. It thickens slightly, like evening air gathering density before true night settles in. The weathered house does not move, but something within it eases further, a quiet rounding of presence, as though every surface has found its final position for the day. You remain seated. The bench beneath you feels more familiar now, less like an object and more like an extension of posture. The wood has adjusted to your weight. It has learned you. There's a faint seam along the edge where two boards meet, not perfectly flush, just a shallow ridge beneath your palm. You trace it without thinking. It is smooth from years of contact. Countless hands must have rested there before yours. The ridge holds their memory in the gentlest way. You lower your hand again. The air in the room settles further. Even the smallest currents have stilled. The house has drawn its breath in and is holding it not out of tension, but out of balance. A faint shift sounds somewhere above the roof, adjusting to cooling air. It is barely audible, a small wooden sigh, then quiet again. The sound does not travel far. The walls absorb it. You feel your spine soften where it meets the plaster. The contact is steady, cool, grounding. There is no need to adjust your position. The alignment has already arranged itself. Your breathing has deepened into something slower, more spacious. Inhale, exhale. The intervals between breaths stretch slightly, not because you are trying, but because the room has slowed the rhythm for you. You become aware of how the darkness holds shapes. The doorway is no longer defined by contrast, but by depth. The shelf dissolves into tone. The photograph has become a suggestion rather than a frame. Nothing sharp remains. Your shoulders lower another fraction. The muscles along your back release into the wall without resistance. The bench supports the lower spine in a way that feels exact. There is a kind of patience in old houses. They do not rush to fill silence. They do not demand attention. They simply continue holding space. A faint scent of wood, dry, faintly sweet, lingers in the air. It is not strong, just present enough to remind you that the house has absorbed years of warmth, of seasons, of slow weathering. Your feet rest flat against the boards. The grain beneath them feels consistent now, no longer distinct ridges, but a unified surface. The floor does not shift. It receives your weight without commentary. The quiet deepens. You sense the entire structure around you, beams above, walls to either side, the weight of the roof not as pressure, but as containment. The house does not feel confining. It feels enclosing in the way cupped hands hold water. There is something deeply steady about that. A tiny metallic tick sounds from somewhere near the door, perhaps the latch adjusting as temperature settles. It clicks slightly off-center, softer than it did earlier. Then it is gone. The sound lands gently in the air and fades. You do not follow it. Your breathing continues. The distinction between body and bench has thinned further. Your weight seems to distribute more evenly now. Hips, spine, shoulders resting into support rather than hovering above it. The room feels warmer, though the temperature has not changed. It is the kind of warmth that comes from settling rather than heat. The darkness seems closer now, but not oppressive. It wraps around edges and softens them. You notice how little remains to observe. The house has become less visual and more atmospheric. You are aware of volume rather than objects. The space above you feels wide, though unseen. The space around you feels even, contained. Your head tips slightly forward, chin lowering a fraction. The movement is small and unforced. The bench holds, the wall steadies, the air remains. There is a subtle awareness of your heartbeat again, steady, calm, consistent. It seems to match the rhythm of the house itself. The beams do not strain, the walls do not lean. The roof rests securely overhead. The structure has endured weather, heat, cold, footsteps, seasons. It has learned the art of standing without effort. You sense that resilience now. It is not dramatic, it is quiet. A deeper stillness arrives. Your hands rest more fully on your thighs. Fingers uncurl slightly, relaxing into a shape that feels natural and sustainable. The small seam in the wood beneath your palm no longer draws attention. It has become part of the background. There is a faint coolness at your ankles where air brushes along the floorboards. It moves gently, almost imperceptibly. Then it stills. The house continues. You are no longer tracking time. There is only the steady presence of room, breath, weight. The darkness has grown uniform. The edges of the doorway have dissolved entirely into shadow. The photograph on the wall is no longer an image. It is simply part of the wall. Your awareness drifts inward. The sensation of sitting becomes less about posture and more about being held. The bench beneath you feels grounded, rooted. The floor beneath that groundedness feels stable, unwavering. You are not supporting yourself here, you are supported. A faint memory passes through your mind, not of a specific moment, but of sitting in another room long ago as daylight faded in much the same way. It does not sharpen into image. It does not demand reflection. It simply warms and then recedes. The house seems to absorb even that. Your breathing smooths further. The inhale no longer feels separate from the exhale. The cycle has rounded into continuity. You sense the entire structure around you as one entity, not beams and boards and walls, but a single, quiet presence. You sit within it, it sits around you. There is no urgency in this room, no unfinished tasks, no need for adjustment. The house has completed its settling for the night, and you, without realizing it, have done the same. The quiet does not press. It does not require. It simply holds. You remain there, grounded against the wall, supported by the bench, surrounded by the steady architecture of wood and air. The weathered house continues to remember in its own silent way, and you remain within that remembering, not separate from it, but gently folded into its calm. The darkness deepens by degrees, so small they would be easy to miss if you were looking for change. You are not, you are resting within it. The room has reached a point where outlines no longer matter. The doorway has become depth. The shelf has become tone. The ceiling feels present only as a gentle sense of space above you. Your breathing remains slow, unforced. Inhale, exhale. The air feels cooler now along the bridge of your nose, warmer as it leaves. The cycle continues with a rhythm that feels older than thought. Somewhere in the structure, wood adjusts again, a faint internal shift. Not loud, just a settling. A reminder that even stillness is made of tiny movements. The house does not resist those adjustments. It receives them and returns to quiet. You feel the same. A subtle heaviness has gathered in your limbs. Not fatigue, not strain, just gravity finding its level. Your shoulders slope more easily. Your spine rests without needing correction. There is a kind of wisdom in buildings that have endured. They learn how to stand without tension. You sense that lesson here not as instruction, but as atmosphere. The bench beneath you no longer feels like a separate object. It has become part of posture. The wall at your back is less a surface and more a steady boundary that allows you to release effort. The air in the room has grown denser, though not thick. It carries the faint scent of aged wood and something cooling in the unseen kitchen, perhaps the lingering trace of tea or bread long since finished. It is not strong enough to name, just present enough to feel familiar. Your head lowers another fraction. There is no reason to lift it. The darkness supports the gesture. A small crease in the fabric of the cushion beneath you presses gently against your thigh. You notice it for a moment, the way it holds its shape from years of weight, then it blends back into sensation. The floorboards beneath your feet feel warmer now than earlier, though the temperature has not changed. Your awareness has simply softened enough to register their steadiness. You remain, the quiet gathers further, like dusk settling into a deeper tone. There is something almost tender about how old houses hold night. They do not fight it. They do not illuminate it excessively. They allow shadow to arrive in layers. You feel those layers now not visually, but atmospherically. A soft thickening of presence, a rounding of edges. Your hands have grown still. Fingers no longer shift. Palms rest evenly. The pulse in your wrists feels faint, steady, aligned with the rhythm of breath. Another faint sound surfaces, a hinge somewhere in the hallway releasing a slight metallic sigh. It is so small it might have been imagined. It lands and disappears. You do not follow it. The room closes around silence again. The boundary between your body and the air has thinned further. The coolness at your ankles feels less distinct. The warmth along your spine feels less localized. Sensation has spread into something more diffuse. You are aware of being held. The walls do not move closer. They simply feel nearer in a way that suggests protection rather than confinement. The ceiling remains unseen, but its presence is steady. The beams above, though invisible, feel anchored, patient. Your breathing slows further. The exhale lingers. The inhale arrives softly. There is no anticipation between them. The rhythm has become circular. You sense the entire house in a single impression now, not rooms and hallways and door frames, but one continuous structure. It stands, it holds, it remembers. A faint thought arises not of a task or a plan, but of how many evenings have folded into this same quiet. The walls have absorbed countless sunsets. The floor has known countless footsteps that slowed just as yours have. The thought does not linger long. It warms and dissolves. Your weight feels evenly distributed now, no pressure points demanding adjustment. The bench supports. The wall steadies. The floor receives. You do not need to shift. The darkness has grown uniform enough that it feels almost tactile, a soft presence resting against skin. It does not obscure. It cradles. There is something deeply reassuring about that. Your jaw relaxes. Your tongue settles more fully against the base of your mouth. Even the small muscles around your eyes release, though your gaze has long since lost focus. A subtle, cool current brushes the floor again, perhaps air moving through a gap near the baseboard, then stills. The house remains, you remain. The distinction between being inside the house and being part of its stillness has grown less defined. The room no longer feels like something you occupy. It feels like something you are within. Your breathing continues without interruption. The inhale no longer feels separate from the quiet. The exhale no longer feels separate from the air. Everything has settled into alignment. There are no sharp edges in the room now, no bright contrasts, no need for attention, only depth, only space, only presence. The weathered house stands around you as it always has, beams anchored, walls steady, roof resting securely above. It does not ask you to leave. It does not ask you to move. It simply holds. And you, without effort, have softened fully into that holding. The night has gathered completely now. The silence feels whole. And within that silence, you remain steady, supported, gently merged with the quiet architecture of wood, air, and memory. The silence does not feel empty. It feels inhabited, not by voices or movement, but by the simple fact of structure, beams crossing above, walls leaning gently into one another, the floor carrying its quiet weight. Your breathing remains slow, the space between each inhale and exhale widening slightly, as though the air itself is taking longer to return. The darkness has reached its fullest tone now. It is not thick. It is not heavy. It is simply complete. You become aware of how little effort it takes to remain here. Your shoulders have dropped further than before. The small muscles at the base of your neck have released entirely. Even the subtle holding behind your eyes has eased. There is a kind of trust in this moment. The house does not require vigilance. It stands as it has stood through countless nights, storms pressing at its walls, wind brushing its roof, summer air moving through its open windows. Tonight is gentle. The structure knows how to hold gentleness. A faint memory surfaces, not of a specific event, but of a similar quiet in another place. A room where the light lowered slowly, where the air grew still, where nothing more was needed. You do not try to place it. It warms briefly and recedes. Your palms feel cooler now, resting against fabric that has long since adapted to the shape of bodies before yours. The weave beneath your fingers has softened over time. There is a small area where the threads sit slightly thicker, a subtle irregularity shaped by years of weight. You notice it, then you let it fade back into texture. The room seems to breathe with you. The faint expansion of air with each inhale feels mirrored by the barely perceptible shift of wood as temperature settles. A quiet exchange, your body releasing warmth, the house holding it. Outside, the night has fully gathered. There are no outlines left to track, only the suggestion of space beyond the walls. A distant sound touches the air, perhaps a single step on gravel far from here, perhaps the smallest movement of leaves. It arrives so lightly it almost feels imagined. Then it is gone. The quiet that follows feels deeper. You sense the entire structure around you again, not in parts, but as a whole. The staircase unseen in the hallway, the door resting closed, the beams overhead forming their quiet geometry. There is something reassuring about that geometry. It does not change. It does not demand. It simply holds shape. Your weight feels heavier now, though not burdensome. The bench supports without resistance. The wall behind you has become less a surface and more a steady presence. Even your hands have grown still enough that you no longer feel the need to reposition them. Breath, pause, breath again. The exhale lingers longer than the inhale now, dissolving into the room's steady hush. Your thoughts have grown sparse. When one surfaces, it moves slowly, like dust drifting in lamplight, then settles without imprint. The house remembers countless nights like this. The boards have cooled and warmed through seasons. The air has thickened and thinned. The roof has listened to rain and snow. Tonight is only another soft layer, and you are resting within it. The boundary between your body and the stillness has softened further. You no longer feel separate from the quiet. You are held inside it. You are part of it. The weathered house remains steady, its memory woven into every beam and floorboard. And you, without effort, remain steady within it too. The quiet does not deepen further. It simply becomes familiar. You are no longer adjusting to the darkness. You are within it completely now. The house has settled into its night posture, and you have settled with it. Your breathing has found its most natural pace. Inhale, a slow widening. Exhale, a soft release that seems to extend beyond your body, dissolving into the surrounding air. There is no need to shape the rhythm, it carries itself. The bench beneath you feels less like furniture and more like ground. Its support is constant. The wall at your back has lost its edges. It is no longer a surface you lean against, it is simply steadiness behind you. Your head lowers a fraction more, not intentionally, just because it can. Somewhere deeper in the structure, a beam shifts its weight by the smallest measure. A faint wooden murmur travels through the frame of the house and disappears. You do not follow it. It belongs to the building. The house knows how to settle itself. Your body knows how to settle too. There is something almost tender in the way old walls hold night. They do not resist shadow. They do not demand illumination. They allow darkness to move through them without disturbance. You feel that allowance now. Your thoughts have thinned into something soft and intermittent. When one appears, it carries no urgency. It arrives like a slow ripple and fades before it reaches the edge of awareness. You remain. The air has grown cooler by the smallest degree. You feel it along your wrists, your cheeks. It is not cold, it is steady. The kind of cool that invites stillness rather than movement. Your hands rest loosely in your lap. The fingers no longer shift. The palms carry no weight. You are aware of the floor beneath your feet, its quiet solidity, its patience. There is a faint indentation where countless steps have worn the board smoother than the rest. You feel it without looking. The house remembers through its surfaces. You remember through sensation. A faint scent drifts through the room, something like flour or dust, or the lingering trace of warmed wood cooling again. It does not demand identification. It simply exists. Your jaw softens further. Your tongue settles more deeply. Even the small space behind your eyes has released. The darkness is now uniform, uninterrupted. There are no shapes left to interpret, only depth. You are not observing the house. You are inside its quiet. There is no difference between being seated and being supported, between breathing and the air itself, between stillness and the structure that holds it. The night outside the walls has gathered completely. Whatever movement remains beyond this place feels distant, unimportant. The house is steady. Your body is steady. The two feel aligned. A distant sound, perhaps a single shift of wind against the roof, brushes lightly across the air, then settles. It leaves no echo. The quiet closes again. You notice how little remains to be done. Nothing needs adjustment. Nothing requires attention. The bench holds, the wall steadies. The air continues its soft exchange with your breath. There is a kind of wisdom in remaining, not moving, not altering, simply allowing. The house does not anticipate morning. It rests fully in night. You feel the same. Your awareness has grown spacious, but not distant. It rests close to the body, close to breathe, close to the quiet warmth that lingers in wood long after the day has passed. There is something deeply reassuring about structures that endure. They do not rush, they do not strive, they hold. And you, seated here within their steady frame, are held too. The boundary between inside and outside has grown thin. The boundary between you and the house thinner still. You remain, supported, contained, gently merged with the weathered beams and the soft hush of night. The house remembers, and within that remembering you rest. Nothing shifts now. Nothing needs to. The quiet has reached its full shape, and you are already inside it. The stillness does not change. It settles more completely. You feel it in the smallest places now, in the space between your shoulder blades, in the gentle weight of your eyelids, in the way your hands no longer search for a more comfortable position. They have found it. Your breathing has grown almost imperceptible. It no longer feels like something you are doing. It feels like something the room is doing with you. The air moves in and out with such quiet agreement that it is difficult to tell where it begins. There is a softness in your chest that was not there before. Not dramatic, just eased, as though something that once held itself upright has finally allowed itself to lean. The house leans too. Not physically, its beams are strong, its foundations steady, but in temperament. It does not brace against the night, it receives it. The walls hold shadow the way fabric holds dye, evenly without strain. You sense the ceiling above, though you cannot see it. You sense the corners of the room, the places where walls meet at quiet angles. Even in darkness, those angles feel rounded. Time has softened them. You have softened too. A faint ticking somewhere, perhaps a cooling pipe or a distant contraction of wood, marks a moment. Then another. It does not measure time. It simply acknowledges that time is passing. You do not need to follow it. Your head tilts slightly, guided by nothing more than gravity and permission. The bench remains constant beneath you. Its grain is familiar now. You could trace it with your fingertips without looking. There is a place along the wall beside you where a hand once rested often enough to leave the faintest change in sheen. You cannot see it in this darkness, but you know it is there. A small record of presence, a quiet testimony to being. You are another presence now, another moment held, and the house does not distinguish between past and present occupants. It gathers them gently into its stillness. Outside, the wind brushes once more across the roofline, slower now. It moves without insistence. The night has settled into its own deep rhythm, broad and patient. Inside, everything mirrors that patience. Your jaw releases further. Your tongue rests fully. Your forehead smooths. There is nothing to anticipate. No thought pressing forward. No need to review the day. The dark has no edges left. It is not vast. It is near. You feel suspended within it, not floating, not falling, simply supported on all sides by absence of disturbance. There is something quietly intimate about rooms like this. Rooms that have known laughter, work, quiet meals, long evenings. Rooms that do not demand to be admired. They simply hold what passes through them. You feel held in that same way. No evaluation, no expectation, just space that accommodates. Your breathing slows another fraction, and another. The air is cool against your cheeks, warm at the base of your throat, a gentle balance, neither sharp nor dull. The house does not sleep, but it rests. You sense the beams settling into their most natural posture, the floorboards lying flat and undisturbed. The door at the far end of the room remaining closed, not as a barrier, but as a boundary that requires no attention. Everything is complete in this moment. There is a kind of quiet dignity in that completeness. You do not need to adjust your spine. The bench holds you. You do not need to regulate your breath. It finds its own depth. You do not need to watch for any sound. The night carries itself. You are no longer aware of your hands, or your feet, or the edges of your shoulders. Awareness has drawn inward, settling like embers that glow without flame. There is no brightness, no movement, just a steady warmth beneath everything. The house remembers, and in its remembering, it keeps this moment too, the weight of you, the slow cadence of breath, the hush that has gathered fully around both. You remain, not separate from the structure, not separate from the quiet. The stillness has reached its deepest register, and you are already resting inside it. The darkness has settled into its most natural shape now. You do not feel it lowering any further. It has already found its depth. Your breathing moves in long, unhurried arcs. In, out, each one complete in itself. The air does not hurry you. It enters easily, leaves easily. There is nothing to adjust. The room has become less a place you occupy, and more a space that includes you without effort. The bench beneath you has long since stopped feeling like an object. It is simply support. The wall beside you holds the night the way it has always held it, without comment. There is a faint shift somewhere in the structure, a beam easing into its own weight, a timber answering the slow cooling of air. It is not a sound that calls attention to itself. It is more like a quiet agreement, the house acknowledging the hour. You remain still, not because you must, because stillness has already taken you in. Your shoulders rest fully now. There is no subtle holding left in them, no unconscious brace. The tension that once lived there has dissolved into the dark, as unnoticed as dust settling after a door has closed. A small crease in the wood at the edge of the bench presses lightly against the back of your palm. You have felt it before, but now it barely registers. Just a memory of texture, a trace of contact, the kind of detail that belongs to a place long inhabited. There is something reassuring about rooms that do not shift dramatically at night. They do not transform. They do not become mysterious. They simply deepen. The ceiling above you remains steady. The walls hold their line. The floor lies flat and patient beneath everything. And within that steadiness, you are held. Your breath slides into a softer rhythm again. You are not counting. You are not following it. It simply continues. It rounds itself gently at the edges. Outside, the night air has cooled further. You can feel the difference in the faint currents near your face. They brush past once, then settle again. Nothing moves with intention. Everything moves with ease. Your thoughts have grown thin, not absent, just light enough to pass through without anchoring. You notice one, perhaps a fragment of something earlier in the day, but it does not linger. It passes like wind through an open frame, leaving nothing behind. The quiet in this house has a particular character. It is not hollow. It is layered. It carries traces of every day that has ended here before. The soft scrape of chairs once moved. The murmur of voices long faded. The faint impression of footsteps along boards now worn smooth. You are simply one more evening among many, and the house does not distinguish between them. It receives each one with the same quiet patience. Your spine rests fully against the support behind you. There is no more adjustment needed. Even the small muscles along your neck have loosened into their natural shape. You sense the outline of your body less clearly now. The boundary between skin and air has softened. There is no dramatic dissolving, just a gentle easing of awareness outward and inward at once. A faint mechanical hum, perhaps from something distant, perhaps from nothing identifiable at all, settles into the background of your hearing. It does not call you toward it, it simply exists. A low, continuous presence. Like breath made external, you do not need to listen. You do not need to ignore it. It becomes part of the larger stillness. There is a kind of generosity in darkness like this. It does not insist on being understood. It allows things to fade without resistance. Your eyelids grow heavier, not abruptly, gradually. The muscles around them have stopped working. They are simply resting. The house remains upright and constant around you. The beams overhead do not strain. The corners hold their angles without effort. The door at the far side of the room remains closed, its latch seated perfectly in place. Somewhere deep within the wood, old grain lines remember years of sun and rain and human touch. Those memories are not active. They are simply embedded, quiet histories held in fibers and knots. You are another quiet presence within that memory now. Another breath, another pause, your chest rises, falls. It feels smaller now, more contained, as though your entire body has drawn inward to a calm center. There is no destination ahead, no next step waiting. The day has already lowered into silence, and you are inside that lowering. Your jaw releases another fraction. Your tongue rests flat and still. Even your fingertips have loosened their quiet vigilance. The bench beneath you has taken your full weight without complaint. It will continue to do so long after you drift beyond this awareness. There is a tenderness in that reliability, the kind that does not announce itself. It simply remains. You do not need to stay awake to maintain any part of the scene. The house does not require your attention. The night does not depend on your witness. Everything will continue in its own slow unfolding. The air cools slightly again, brushing past your cheek. It is softer now, less distinct. The difference between breath and breeze has blurred. You are not separate from the dark around you. You are not separate from the structure that holds you. The sense of inside and outside has grown faint. Your breathing deepens once more, then settles into an even quieter pattern. It is almost impossible to tell where the inhale ends and the exhale begins. There is no urgency, no expectation, just a steady presence that holds itself. You may notice a final small sound, the faint settling of a floorboard somewhere beyond your line of awareness. It does not startle. It simply affirms that wood responds to cooling air. Then even that fades. The room has reached its most natural state, complete, unmoving, held, and you remain within it, not as a visitor, not as an observer, but as something included in its quiet continuity. Your breathing continues, your body rests. The night gathers more fully around everything, and there is nothing further to tend. The darkness does not deepen any further now. It has reached the place it was always moving toward. You feel that in the way your body has stopped adjusting itself. There is no more shifting of weight, no subtle corrections in posture. The small muscles that once held your head upright have given over to gravity in the most natural way. Your chin lowers slightly. Your shoulders sink another quiet fraction. It happens without decision. The room does not respond to these changes because it does not need to. It has already made space for you. The floor remains steady. The walls hold their lines. The air settles at an even temperature that asks nothing from your skin. You are not required to remain aware. You are not required to listen. The silence has grown, so complete that it no longer feels like the absence of sound. It feels like a presence in itself. a wide, even field that carries everything gently within it. Somewhere beyond the walls, night continues its slow rotation. Trees lean into darkness. A distant path cools under open sky. A single window in some other house dims as a light is switched off. But none of that presses against you. The house around you keeps its own quiet rhythm. A beam eases once more into place as the air cools by another degree. The sound is so small it barely registers. A wooden sigh, a memory of movement rather than movement itself. Then stillness again. Your breath slips in and out in long, unbroken arcs. It has grown softer, less defined. You cannot quite tell when it begins or ends. There is something deeply reassuring about that kind of rhythm. It does not demand attention. It does not insist on improvement. It simply continues. Your hands rest open now, not intentionally, just naturally. The faint crease in the bench beneath your palm no longer presses against you in any noticeable way. The contact has become so familiar it has almost disappeared. That is how night works sometimes. It does not remove things, it makes them less urgent. The outlines of your body have softened. Your spine remains supported, but you are no longer consciously aware of its alignment. Your legs feel heavier and lighter at the same time, heavy in their stillness, light in their lack of effort. There is no longer any distinction between waiting and resting. You are simply here, and here is enough. A faint scent lingers in the air, perhaps old wood cooling, perhaps something once warmed earlier in the day. It is subtle, nearly imperceptible, the kind of scent that does not announce itself unless everything else has grown quiet. It drifts through your awareness and then thins. You do not follow it, you do not analyze it. It belongs to the room, and the room holds it without urgency. There is a tenderness in spaces that have known many evenings. They do not hurry the dark. They do not resist it. They receive it fully, allowing it to settle into corners and along beams and across the grain of the floor. You are another part of that settling. Your eyelids lower further now. The weight behind them has increased. It is not heavy in a burdensome way. It is heavy the way a blanket feels when it finally finds its shape over you. Comforting, enclosing. Your breathing has become so even that it seems to move the entire room in subtle synchrony. The air shifts slightly with each exhale, then returns. Nothing dramatic, just a small adjustment in the unseen currents around you. You are not directing any of it. It happens on its own. There is nothing unfinished here, nothing awaiting completion. The day has fully released its hold. Whatever once required your attention has already dissolved into memory. And memory, at this hour, does not demand clarity. It rests. Your body knows this rhythm well. It has entered it countless times before. The gradual loosening, the gentle inward folding, the quiet agreement between breath and darkness. There is no effort left in you, and none required. A distant sound, perhaps wind brushing lightly against the outer wall, arrives and fades before you can place it. It does not interrupt. It belongs. The house remains upright and patient. It will stand through the night. It will stand through many more. You do not need to remain aware to ensure its steadiness. You do not need to witness the way the night continues beyond your closed eyes. Everything that must happen will happen without your involvement. That realization does not feel heavy. It feels freeing. Your jaw loosens completely now. Your tongue rests fully still. Even the small flickers of thought that once rose and dissolved have slowed into longer gaps of nothing at all. In those gaps, there is no sense of time, only a wide, even presence. You may sense one final shift, a tiny settling in the boards beneath you, a nearly inaudible adjustment. It is so familiar it feels almost comforting. Then quiet again. The darkness has become soft at the edges. It is no longer something outside you. It feels as though it rests gently along your skin, behind your closed eyes, within your chest. You are not separate from it. You are not separate from the room. The house continues to hold its shape. The beams remain anchored. The air remains even. The faint hum of distant life, too far away to define, remains low and constant. And within that constancy, you are held. There is no next moment to anticipate, no next action to take. Your breathing continues. In, out, each one complete in itself. The world does not pause because you rest, it continues. The night moves slowly across the sky. Wood cools, air shifts. Somewhere, perhaps, a light extinguishes. Somewhere else, a door closes softly. But none of it requires your attention. The house remains steady. You remain within it, and the quiet gathers fully now. The house continues as it always has. Its rhythm remains. You do not need to follow it. You are already within it. The night gathers, the quiet holds, and the rest will carry itself.